Welcome to episode 27 of the Hoop Threads podcast, back with the NBA Roundtable to talk about the NBA offseason. So we'll start, just let the people know where they can find you on Twitter, your name and everything. Give the people an introduction, starting with Jordan.
Yeah, this is Jordan. You can find me on Twitter at bilo_LC. That's BILO.
Selene.
Yeah, Tyler Selene. You can find me on Twitter at TSOLLENNE.
So proud of you for.
So Marcellus, you can find me at the Legit CEO on Twitter. Also follow my company, Legit Sports Stats.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Shout out Legit Stats. All right, so let's get going. Question number one, NBA tiers. So give us the teams that are your championship contenders for this year. So we're starting off the East with this side. So I got the Brooklyn Nets, Milwaukee Bucks, Boston Celtics, Miami Heat, and the Philadelphia 76ers. I mean, the only real change this year is just, bringing the Nets in. That's obviously with Kyrie and KD coming back. Hard to count them out of the championship race with those two back. So, Jordan, what you got?
Yeah, so I kind of took this two ways. In terms of legit championship contenders, I'm looking at teams that can take it all the way to the title. So I agree with the Nets, the Bucks, and the Heat. I think I'd throw the Celtics in there just because Kemba and them having the chance to improve towards the end of the season. If you're looking at teams that can just make a run to the conference finals, I'd throw Philly and Toronto in there. But yeah, Milwaukee, Brooklyn, and Miami are the big three for me there. I think the main thing with Brooklyn, people wonder if Kyrie and Durant are going to work. But the last time Durant was healthy, I mean, he's been staking his mantle to the best player in the game. And, he's had some pretty rough injury issues, but I just think the ceiling for the Nets with around what they have around those two stars is championship worthy.
So Lenny?
I mean, yeah, I think that there's a pretty clear consensus here that everybody's on the Bucks, especially after they finally got another competent playoff second ball handler. The Heat, and then the Nets, health willing. And then after that, I don't know. For me, the Celtics kind of fell into like that next tier with losing Gordon Hayward. As much as a lot of people, including me, will rip on. Well, I'll rip on the team, but as much as people want to rip on like Hayward, like he did like elevate the Celtics, I think, into that category of being a true contender. But I think that losing him for a team that already lacks depth, I think is going to be a big problem for the Celtics down the line.
Okay, Marcellus?
I feel like I've got the Heat as real championship contenders along with the Bucks and the Nets. Everything that we've heard about Kevin Durant this offseason has been he's in great shape. He looks as good as he's ever looked. And I think Kyrie is going to come in and be Kyrie. So in addition to them, I've got the 76ers. I mean, I feel like maybe I'm just hoping on, wishing on a star that Embiid and Simmons figure it out. But I feel like sooner or later they will. And I think that, Seth Curry was a great pickup for them to add a shooter. I've also got the Celtics being that fifth contender in my Eastern Division just because of the fact that I think Jason Tatum is that good. I think that Jaylen Brown emerged. More playing time more time to gel for Kemba Walker. I just think that they're, one of the better teams in the conference. So who'll get home court advantage out of those five will be interesting to see. But I definitely think that those are my five contenders.
Yeah, hopefully Kemba gets back from his injury soon. The only reason that I really included the 76ers is because I feel like at the trade deadline, they could be a pretty active team, especially with who's calling the shots there now. So let's go next to our playoffs teams for the Eastern Conference. So who we think is going to fill in behind those top 4 or 5 that we picked. So I got the Indiana Pacers, the Orlando Magic, the Washington Wizards, the Atlanta Hawks, and the Toronto Raptors. I think the Toronto Raptors have a chance to jump up and be in the top 4, like top 5 in the conference. I don't think they lost the 2 older bigs, but they replaced them with some good young talent. And just another year, Fred VanVleet and Spicy P's development. I think they're going to be solid. So, Jordan, what you got for that one?
Yeah, I'll give you my overall order. Just to recap, I had Milwaukee, Brooklyn, Miami. I did have Toronto. I just don't have them in my championship contender. I do think they'll be a better regular season team. I have them slotting in at 4th with Boston and Philly following them. And then I've got Indiana, the Pacers, just kind of status quo, not doing anything, sitting at 7. I like Washington, Atlanta at 8 and 9, and then Detroit at 10 to finish out the teams that are going to make that little play-in round. I think for me in this season, a big thing to look at with a limited off season for a lot of teams is I'm looking at strong coaching to fill in behind the superstars. So with Detroit and Dwayne Casey, I don't love everything they did in the off season, but I think Dwayne Casey's going to get a lot out of the guys he has there. So I see the Pistons slotting in and definitely making a run towards one of those play-in spots.
Bold. What you got, Tyler?
I mean, it's a lot of more of the same. It's a lot of the usual suspects after that top tier. Raptors, Celtics, Sixers. The Pacers continue to tread water for now, like they hang in there. And yeah, maybe the Hawks make a little bit of an ascent. Maybe the Wizards pop up in there, but whoever wins them the play-in games is just going to be lunch meat for whoever the top seed is, because I don't see any of them being able to hang with any of those teams, like the Bucks, Heat, or Nets. I don't see the Hawks or Wizards being able to hang with them. So yeah, a little bit more of the same for the old baby conference.
Marcellus.
As my 3 years, it's funny because I only had it as 8 playoff teams. That's what I'm used to. And then we got this playing stuff like it's the tournament. So I've got the Raptors, Wizards, and Hawks that I would have as somewhere in there as my 6, 7, 8 seeds. And then with these extra guys I'm going with the Bulls and the Magic. I was kind of thinking about the Pacers just because of what they had done last year, but I really think that Victor Oladipo is still kind of in the hunt to get traded. I don't think he's happy in Indiana. And I think that Zach LaVine and Lauri Markkanen together, along with Wendell Carter, are going to make the Bulls, a much better team than they were last year. So the Magic tread water at 10 because of Aaron Gordon, and that ends up being my 10 playoff teams.
I like that Bulls call. It'll be interesting to see what they do once they have a team that doesn't just hate the coach. So
right.
running suicides. Man. I like Patrick.
Starter of the NBA right there.
I like Patrick Williams too, so that's an interesting take. Not too bad. So next question, share which team's GM you feel like had the best offseason. So for me, I mean, I think it was Milwaukee. I mean, I think that they kind of disappointed in last year's run. A lot of people expected them to do more. They didn't really perform well in the bubble. I think this year things could be quite different in the players that they added around the margins, in addition to bringing in my guy, Drew Holiday. They drafted Shooter and Sam Merrill. They brought in EJ Montgomery, who I think could be a good defensive big off the bench. They got Jordan Nwora to score a little bit off the bench. Brought in Bobby Portis to rebound, block some shots, score a little bit down low. Nick Stauskas back in the NBA. As another sharpshooter around Giannis, and really, really underrated signing, and one that we really liked in the playoffs this past year, Torrey Craig, to play defense, be able to switch in the guard and wing spots. And then they also brought in Bryn Forbes and DJ Augustine, just solid vets that know how to win and know what a winning culture looks like. So in addition to also bringing in Jalen Adams, who I like as a sleeper to eventually develop into something in the next, year or two. So I really like what they did. They lost, George Hill, Bledsoe, Sterling Brown, Korver, Ilyasova, Robin Lopez, Wes Matthews, Marvin Williams. I mean, just shooters and vets that I think are replaceable by the guys that I just mentioned. So I really like what they did. What do you got, Jordan?
Yeah, so for me, the GM who made a nice move this offseason and just kind of won the offseason in the East, got to be Tommy Shepard, looking at the Wizards. When you can trade for someone like Russell Westbrook, and not only that, but it was just being able to get off John Wall's contract. I like John Wall as a basketball player, great just person and what he did for the community in DC. But he's coming off a pretty serious injury with the Achilles. Even in his last 2 seasons that he played before that injury, he only totaled like 78 games in those 2 seasons. And his not only had his game kind of cratered, his one stat that stuck out to me, his free throw percentage in those 2 seasons was 70%. He's never shot more than 80% from the line in the season. So you're looking at a guy now that, max gets you like 45, 35, 80 shooting line from the floor if everything breaks well. with limited athleticism. Kind of see him maybe taking the Derrick Rose route here. So to be able to get off that when you were paying him 40, pushing $50 million a year at the end of that contract, and only giving up a first to get Russ. And to me, the key with the Russell Westbrook acquisition is you're pairing him with Scott Brooks, the coach who he had in his first part of his career in Oklahoma City that he had the most success with. I don't know. I just kind of see Russ as a rejuvenated person. I think he's been in a lot of toxic environments lately in Houston, and just even being involved with some of the stuff in OKC, kind of how it kind of broke down there at the end. I think you're going to see a Russ that absolutely in the Eastern Conference can dictate things, as he did in the senior conference throughout the last decade or so. So definitely like what the Wizards did with the Russ acquisition. Like the swing in the value for Denny Avdija with a number 9 pick. Cassius Winston was a nice grab at 54. They also made a couple nice depth moves. Robin Lopez isn't going to turn any heads, but it's a nice signing that he's going to get in there and get on the floor, and he's always going to compete and play hard, which is more than you can say for a lot of guys fill in some bench minutes. So I like Russ. And then everyone forgets, not that this has anything to do with what the GM did, but Brad Beal last year getting snubbed from the All-Star game was absolutely ludicrous. The guy's averaging 30 points a game. And I think going and getting Russ is a great way to placate Brad Beal and, make sure he stays there in Washington for the rest of his contract and isn't trying to opt out like, every NBA fantasy general manager has been trying to find a way to trade Brad Beal to the Nuggets or the Lakers or this, that, or the other. I think this Russ Westbrook deal kind of ensures that there's going to be a big 2 there. And, they may not have, top half of the conference aspirations this year. But I do think they're building something, and I think there's something to be said for competing. And boy, if you get, the Bucks and the Wizards in the first round and you get Russ Westbrook going against Giannis, that would be a heck of a matchup. So give me the Wizards, like the direction they're trending in.
Yep. Me too. Second that for sure. So Lenny?
Yeah, I mean, for me, one of my big winner that I'm going with is actually the Nets. For me, I mean, they re-signed Joe Harris, granted to a pretty big deal, and they also got Bruce Brown on a kind of a bargain deal from the Pistons, who might be a solid complementary role player. But the key for me was that they got through this offseason by keeping all of that depth. Guys like Dinwiddie, LeVert. So watch out for them in the James Harden sweepstakes. I think that they might be able to make a run if they throw in those guys, Jared Allen, and like some picks. I think that it'd be a deal that not many other teams could match.
Marcellus?
I got the Heat. I feel like because of the fact that they were a contender and we saw that they were missing a couple of pieces, a lot of times those teams tend to go overboard or, kind of mess up the chemistry or go after that big fish. And I liked what they did by, for one, re-signing Goran Dragic and getting a team option on him for that second year. So if he underperforms, if they want to go in a different direction, then they can. They also got Avery Bradley because we saw when Dragic went down in the finals that they needed that backup point guard. So I feel like Avery Bradley is a great addition for them on that note, in addition to them signing Mo Harkless. As a Blazers fan, I remember when we had Mo Harkless and he came huge for us in the playoffs, and I feel like he's a great signing for them in case they have another injury like Bam. They needed someone like Mo Harkless that could step in there, play 3, play 4, hit some shots, and be a good player off the bench for them.
Yep, for sure.
Remember to save me for last. It hasn't been that way, so I wanted to make sure that we knew.
All right, what's the question?
Next question is, the team that we think are positioning themselves for next year's lottery. So the Detroit Pistons, and I don't think it's because they don't have any sort of avenue to the playoffs. I think that's because Troy Weaver is smart and sees all the young guards and wings that are in this next loaded draft class that he can most definitely use to pair with the lottery pick, Killian Hayes that he drafted this year. So, I like some of their moves, Sadiq Bey, Jeremy Grant, that's my guy, DeMath, the guy, he can play the 4 and the 5 and can make up for, he does a lot of things that Blake Griffin doesn't do and vice versa. So they just added a lot of bigs in an era where bigs aren't valued as much. They brought in Sadiq Bey, who can play the 3 as well. Brought in Jeremy Grant, brought in Jahlil Okafor Mason Plumlee. So they basically signed the Nuggets front court, and then added in also drafting in Isaiah Stewart, while also re-signing a free agent in Lewis King. So it just seems like a lot of bigs that do a lot of the same stuff, and are not starters on a championship winning team. And it reminds me of last year when the Knicks just added a bunch of power forwards, veterans in an effort to have some trade chips for the trade deadline. Did not work out for the Knicks. We'll see. We'll see how it works out for the Pistons as far as accumulating draft picks. But I think, this year, especially going forward with this next draft being stacked, and then also with people worried about their salary cap and the money, the economic side of the situation, draft picks are going to be valuable, and people aren't going to want to give those up. So it'll be interesting to see if they flip those for other people. But yeah, I don't really think that they're playing, for championships or anything close to that this year. So Jordan, what you got?
Yeah, I'm going to try to keep this one short and sweet. I don't think there's a reason to overthink it. I'm looking at the Cleveland Cavaliers. They've got 19 wins in each of their past 2 seasons, and their motto after doing so well in those past 2 seasons was basically, let's run it back. When you can throw $60 million a year at Kevin Love and Andre Drummond in your front court and just hope that some of your young guards, finally take that step, why wouldn't you do that? I was a fan of the pick of Okoro at 5. I think he has a lot of tools and has the potential to develop into a solid NBA starter. And it's not like there were a lot of, avenues available for the Cavaliers to improve this offseason. But again, just based on how bad they've been over the last 2 years and the talent that they have on their roster right now, I don't really see many avenues forward in season for them to improve by making many trades. They're my runaway favorite for spot number 15 in the Eastern Conference. They're due to win a lottery by now. It's been a couple of years. So we'll see. Maybe it's their year in 2021.
So you're telling me that signing Marquez Bolton, Damian Dotson, Thon Maker, and JaVale McGee doesn't excite you, Jordan?
They got Thon Maker?
Yeah, they signed.
I didn't know they got Thon Maker either. This blew my mind.
Yeah, they're tanking. Good call, Jordan.
I'm about to root for them.
Anyway, so Letty, what you got for that one?
For my tankers, I'm going with the Knicks. I actually do like it for their offseason because it's like for the first time they're actually embracing the tank. Like their biggest signing of the offseason was essentially like with I think it was a team option on Austin Rivers for the second year. So basically just a 1-year deal, a bunch of 1-year deals on cheap young people. Like they're playing for not only cap space, but they're also playing for the tank, baby. The Knicks might have finally figured it out. Maybe somebody like bound and gagged James Dolan and like stuffed him in the closet, probably Marcel's closet back there. But like somehow that dude has gotten out of the way. And I think that maybe for the first time in 25 years, there's actually a glimmer of hope for the Knicks that isn't Stephon Marbury.
The Harden situation is starting to remind me of the Marbury situation. I hope it doesn't go down that road. Marcellus, what you got for this one?
I'm doubling down with you on the Pistons. I feel like the Pistons suck. We all know they suck. They got Blake Griffin's contract. What are they going to do with it? Who knows? I feel like they are smart about tanking because you get a new GM. He gets in there, tanking your first year, get it out the way, and then start to rebuild. I mean, if you're going to tank, do it early on so that way you have, those couple of years that they're going to give you a little bit of a leash. I also think, like what you mentioned as far as this is a loaded draft class. So if you tank now, even if you get the 5th pick, 6th pick, you might still be getting a franchise guy, like a bona fide franchise guy. So I think that this is a year to tank. I feel like they're in that position. Who knows if they end up even keeping Blake Griffin? I mean, there's just so many question marks, and they picked up a lot of role players. They paid for Jeremy Grant. They paid, a bunch of other guys. They got guys like Isaiah Stewart that all he does is just rebound. They got a bunch of role players so that if they do tank and get that bona fide star player, that a lot of that other stuff is already taken care of. So I think it'd be a good decision for them to tank, and I think that's going to be where they end up.
For sure. So last question is, a GM that either didn't do enough or made you question their plan. So I'll start that off with the 76ers. It's mainly because, they added some stuff around the margins, as far as bringing in some shooters finally to surround Joel Embiid. But I just thought that there was moves to make with their roster, as far as guys that they could trade away to make movements. They still have a ton of bigs. I'm looking at Tobias Harris, and I'm wondering what they're trying to do with him, because it doesn't make any sense that you have Simmons, Tobias Harris, and Embiid in your starting five. And I think part of that is Daryl Morey's looking at seeing how this, the beginning of the season plays out. And like I said, he might be active, at the trade deadline, making moves there. But they made moves around the margins instead of trading away one of their studs while they can still get value for him. And scared money don't make no money. And that's why the Sixers are in the situation that they're in. They tanked for all these years, to finish third or fourth in the East at best, the last couple of years. I don't understand the situation. So Jordan, we'll go to you next.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Orlando Magic. In the spirit of the holiday season, that roster reminds me of just the island of misfit toys. Santa was just going to the dollar store, just trying to fill up the sleigh and just, grab armfuls of whatever he could find. I mean, you've got just an embarrassment of mediocre riches in the front court. Vucevic is nice, but projects. I mean, Isaac is turning into something, but of course now gets injured. Mo Bamba and, all those guys were taken. Isaac and Bamba, I believe, were both top 6 picks. This past draft, they took Cole Anthony, who you just kind of have to wonder if he's a clone of Markelle Fultz, who they already traded for to run point. And then Terrence Ross, news recently come out in the last couple of days that he's got, I think it's a hairline fracture in his toe or his foot. So there's an indefinite timetable that he might be out for. So for me, the Magic have just had all these parts and pieces in place and just have never really done anything with them. I think Aaron Gordon has just been rumored to be on the trade block for the longest time. There were rumors, I think it was for a couple of first-round picks this offseason that the Blazers, I think, had offered that, and that the Magic turned it down. So the Magic just kind of seem content to just be what they are, which in the last couple seasons, their ceiling has basically been taking a game from the Raptors and the Bucks and then just getting smoked in the rest of the first round. I see most of the teams around them in the East are committed to trying to improve. I just don't really see that with the Magic, and it's just a team that I feel really needs a shakeup and has needed a shakeup and has had questionable personnel decisions, for the past 2 or 3 years. So not really sure what they're doing. Maybe in season, they're able to make a move this year and finally get off Aaron Gordon. You've got Chuma Okeke, who's healthy. People kind of thought they reached a little bit on him in the draft process last year with his injury coming into the season, but he'll have a chance to show himself. And maybe if he has a decent season, keep an eye on him, and maybe that frees up an Aaron Gordon deal around the deadline. So, not sure what the Magic are doing.
Marcellus?
I have no clue what the Pacers are doing. I feel like they could have gotten rid of Victor Oladipo. They could have got rid of Miles Turner for some picks or for some kind of compensation, but I just feel like they're just muddling around. I don't even think they're even going to be a playoff team this year. Just seems like the culture there is broken and they're not really doing anything to get better. So they're just kind of getting worse as the conference improves. So that's my pick as far as the GM that didn't really do much. Don't have much to say about them because they didn't really make any moves.
Yeah, I mean, some of their moves are like Brian Bowen, re-signing him, Justin Holiday, Naz Long, Jakar Sampson. I mean, they only had one draft pick that they kept, Cassius Stanley. They brought in Jalen McHugh. I mean, it's all just I'm with you on that one for sure. So Lenny, close us out. What you got?
Thumbs down.
Early in free agency, I was all set and ready to have the Hawks be my big loser because I thought that they've really messed up with the dudes that they brought in to mortgage their future, to also stunt the growth of like their young wings. And then out of nowhere, here come the Hornets, bringing in Gordon Hayward, who I do like as a player. Well, 4 years, $120 million, bro. What are we doing? this is just like philosophically here. You got Gordon Hayward. You should have known as the Hornets, you're already messing up when the team that you were involved in a bidding war with is the Knicks. That should have been your first red flag. Next red flag, the Knicks, it got to a point where the price tag was so high, the Knicks said, whoa, never mind, we're out. And you kept going. That's what you kept. And then where else did you mess up? Bringing in Hayward takes the ball out of the hands of Graham, who had a great year last year. LaMelo Ball, who, you just spent your number 3 pick on. You're taking the ball out of those two guys' hands to put it in Hayward's hands. So then also you add into the problem of having Hayward on your team raises your floor and kind of messes up your odds of getting like the top pick or one of those top picks, because you might accidentally mess around and make the playoffs. Now, because he also isn't good enough to get you like a guaranteed playoff spot. Like, it's really up in the air. So you're not guaranteed to make the playoffs by getting him. You're also guaranteeing that you won't get a top pick by bringing him in. And then finally, the big whopping cherry on top here is that in order to bring him in, they had to stretch the contract of Nicholas Batum, the last albatross contract of the NBA that they had been waiting it's been 3 years since he signed that deal that they've been just like, well, once we finally get rid of him, we'll have some cap space. No, instead of just riding out this year and just being done with it, instead you stretch him. So now you have $9 million of dead cap space the next 3 years, which out of the 4 years of having Gordon Hayward on hand, does that mean that we now have a new nickname for Gordon Hayward? Should we now be referring to him as Gordon Batum .0? I'm just asking, man.
Oh, man.
So they're basically paying $40 million a year for Hayward, is what you're saying. By the time you add in the Batum stretch money, yeah, that's a little rich.
for an injury-prone guy that isn't even going to guarantee you to make the playoffs, but will guarantee that you won't have one of the top picks. Dumb as hell, man.
Interesting too. Something that Jordan actually pointed out to me a year or two ago. Jordan and that franchise's just love for drafting blue blood players. They picked the Vernon Carey from Duke, who at that position, number 32 overall, I didn't think was a terrible value. And then they also brought in Nick Richards at 42 from Kentucky, and then Khalil Whitney as an undrafted free agent from Kentucky as well.
I mean, I'm fine with it if you want to make the point of, they did a lot of little things that are nice or not bad, decent flyers. Like, okay, I'm fine. I'm with it. Like, whatever. Vernon Carey, we'll see. But when you're like big monster splash signing is, we just locked up this 30-year-old injury prone dude for $120 million who's going to take the ball out of the hands of our 2 young guys. What are we doing? Jordan, man, what are you doing? You forget how to win?
Jordan's guy, Gordon Hayward, he played in Utah and then went to Boston and was rumored to go to Indiana. It's now Charlotte. His career has been an interesting one for sure. So any closing thoughts before we wrap up part 1 of our offseason review series? All right.
Man, what the hell are we doing?
No love for Gordon Hayward on the podcast.
I like Gordon Hayward, but man, it's just such a. I mean, good for him. He got the bag. Like, good for him.
He got the bag twice. That's the crazy thing.
Yes.
You know what? Honestly, does that mean that like whatever agent like represents him, that's our real winner of the offseason?
Mark Bartelstein.
Yeah, that's the big winner out of the whole Eastern Conference is Mark Bartelstein, because he's getting 10% of that 120 mil. Like, good for you.
Cleaning.
Yeah, I forget what the stat was. It was only a handful of players, and obviously salaries have increased tremendously, but it was Hayward and maybe like 2 other guys that have received multiple $100 million contracts, which is just wild.
Yeah, did make a ton of sense. All right, guys, appreciate the time, and we're looking forward to part 2.
Let's do it.